it's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just... Sometimes it's like there's this achy... I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on?
That never happens at your house at all. Guys, don't look at her. Don't say a word. Just, that's not you, babe. That's everybody else but you. Man, we are wrapping up our series, Stuck in a Rut. And before we jump into anything, I just want to say and give it up for Dan Pollard and Chris Conley that have jumped in this series and done a great job. Awesome job. Now, if you're new and you're just like, I don't even know who I'm clapping for, I don't know what's happening, those are some of the other guys that are on staff, and they've done a fantastic job in this series. And we highly recommend that you go back and keep up as we've been. And we're wrapping up today in our series, Stuck in a Rut, about relationships and marriage and what it means. And what I hope is that you and I can find some hope in this, because we've actually had some difficult parts of this conversation in what it means to live out this relationship process as a woman, and what it means to live out this relationship and marriage process as a man. And how do you do that individually and then come together and do that well? And we've been in this series for the last 4 weeks, and in week 5 we're wrapping this up. And I hope that we can bring you a little bit, a gargantuan bucket of hope. Because let's be honest, there are times when we look at the landscape of marriage and things are hard and things are difficult. And it's not, when you stand at the altar and you're holding hands and you're looking in each other's eyes, I'm just going to live, everything's going to be amazing. And then you get a year and you're like, everything is hard. This is tough. Things are difficult. And then what do you do in the middle of that? Well, the truth is if we honor God, if we both, in the process of that, buckle down, that we can just be able to experience and be impacted by a beautiful hope. And so over our short time that we have left together today, my desire is that we can leave knowing that we can move past fear and live not only individually in hope. And so if you're single, if you're married, if you're divorced, if you're in middle school or in high school, you're like, I just hope that I can get through school and get to the summer. This message is for you too. And I watch this kind of happen as hope unfolds. On staff, one of our staff members, Becky Bruner, she was have you ever had a moment where you've been super hopeful for something to happen? You got excited? Ever had a time of that where you're just pumped, I can't wait for this to happen? And Becky came in one day, and it was during our staff evaluation day, and she came in, she's like, all right, so we got this plan, and I got to get to the computer, and I got to do, we're like, what's going on? She's like, me and my sisters, I think it's for her 25th birthday, they're going to go to Adele, and they're going to do this. And so, how many of you guys like Adele's music? Yeah? All right. Me, I couldn't care less, but that's fine. And so you're like, oh, what's wrong? It's not my cup of tea. But they were excited, and they were and it was but you got to get on because we know tickets are going to sell out. And so she's at her desk, our offices are over there, and she's at her computer bringing up tabs, and she begins to go through the process of acquiring tickets. She had it open as soon as the time went. Go in, get tickets. And she, on the one tab, got in and started watching the thing circling because it's thinking, Sometimes that's the beach ball of death. Sometimes it's thinking. And so it starts moving around. She's like, all right, now I just got to wait. And she is pumped, and we start kind of cracking jokes a little bit because when she's like one of the only ladies around and it's a bunch of dudes, we're like, what would happen if like you just didn't get the tickets? And she's like, or we're joking around like, hey, what if I just walk by your computer and hit that like tab out? And she's like, you want to die right now? You want to do this? I mean, she would never threaten us except for Adele tickets. And we're like, okay, we're just kidding around and poking fun. But then like that beach ball just kept spinning and nothing happened. Now like an hour has gone by. And so we realized like we don't need to poke this beehive because like this would be bad. And we genuinely start feeling bad because we know like her and her sisters wanted to get on this experience, and she was so excited to jump in to this. And we're watching it unfold, and now we're like feeling bad. We're like, we're sorry, Becky. Like that's just, that stinks. Like we could have tried to push it further because we like to joke around. We're like, man, that stinks. She really wanted that and really wanted to go and have that experience. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out. And I think oftentimes when it comes to marriage and relationships, and even in the journey with God individually, we come into it very hopeful. No, like I mentioned a few weeks ago, nobody stands at the altar and, till death do us part. I'm like, man, I really hope our marriage gets just destroyed on your wedding day. No, everybody's excited, like, this is going to be amazing. We're going to build a home together and 2.5 kids, which I've never quite understood that statistic of, like, you have 2.5. Like, I just keep watching around for, like, the torso that's moving around town and stuff. And we're going to have this in the white picket fence, and it's going to be amazing. Never on a wedding day are people like, I'm not filled with hope. Like, it's actually all I'm filled with. And when it comes to the relationships, and when it comes to even our individual relationship with God, are we hopeful? Almost like Christmas morning. If you remember those moments where you would wake up as a kid, like my parents have pictures of that where my hair is just up in the back and I walk around in my little underoos and my long sleeve shirt and I'm like, oh, they have this picture just so excited about what's taking place. And I love the way Francis and Lisa Chan put it. They wrote this book that we've talked about over the course of this series, You and Me Forever. And they put it this way: when it comes to living in the hope that God designed for us, not only in this life, but in relationships. Here's what they said. It says, you remember those times as a kid when you could hardly sleep on Christmas Eve because you were so excited about opening presents in the morning? That anticipation showed that you had no doubt you're going to get that Red Ryder BB gun or that Barbie or whatever it is. We should have an even greater anticipation for Jesus. If you are not eagerly waiting for him, and he notes that in the New Testament, the book of Hebrews, something is off. Ask God to restore hope in life, not the kind of hope, quote unquote, where you vaguely wish something would happen, but the kind of hope that anchors your soul. And you'll see this around Forefront where we have these anchor t-shirts and things. That one of our core values is that we believe that God is first, that he roots and anchors our soul in him. Meditate on his promises and pray for faith. See, the problem is most of the time we don't pray for faith because we are afraid. We live in what? We live in fear. We live in fear that this might not get better. We don't actually live within hope. We live in the fear that things might not go our way, that things might be so difficult and so far gone in my marriage, in my relationships, in my personal journey with God, that there's no way that I can move in him, that he would ever want someone like me or that can fix something like this. It's so we sit in fear in all sorts of facets in life, believing that nothing can ever change. And today in the story that we're going to look at, there's this guy named Peter. And if you have a Bible, it's over in Matthew chapter 14. It's in the New Testament of the Bible. The Bible's broken up into Old and New Testament. And so flip over to your table of contents, find New Testament, find Matthew. The big numbers in chapter 14 are the chapters, and then we'll be over in verse 22 in a little bit. You can also download an easy-to-read translation of the Bible in your app store. Or, and this is our favorite because we put everything together for you in the Forefront Church app. It's so all your notes today are ready there for you. The quotes that we'll have, you can actually click a link to get that book we talked about and purchase that. And to be able to guide you in a direction where this doesn't just sit for an hour and change, that your faith is engaged over the long haul. And we're catching up with this guy named Peter. And Peter, in Matthew chapter 14, is kind of known as the one who jumps first and asks questions later. We have 3 daughters, and our middle child is those, we can watch it in her eyes. She's very adventurous, and she'll like jump up something, and then like seconds after it happens, you can see the look in her face like, this was a really bad idea. And like, or she'll say something and kind of like think she's funny. And she'll be like, what about it? And she'll, as soon as it finishes off her lips, she's like, that was really dumb. I shouldn't have said that. And all these moments where she thinks and does first and, says things first and does things first and then kind of thinks about it later. And Peter was one of these guys. He wanted to jump into the adventure and everything that was had for him, and then he'd think about it afterwards. And in this passage in Matthew chapter 14, we kind of see a glimpse into the adventure that Peter has that completely correlates to the hope that you and I can have, not only in our relationship with God, but in our marriage with people and in our relationships and future relationships with people as we move forward. Starting in verse 22, and if you don't have a Bible, it'll be here on the screen. It says, immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him on the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up on the mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. So shortly thereafter, Jesus went out to them walking on the lake. Can we just pause for a second and say how wicked awesome that is? I'm not from Jersey, but that's amazing. Like all of a sudden, Jesus is just like, I think I'm going to go for a stroll, and just walks on the lake. Like for me, I go in the neighborhood and I'm like, that's a challenge in and of itself. Like I walked around the neighborhood. Jesus like, I'll just walk on water. Like absolutely unreal. And so, but here's the thing. Verse 26, the disciples saw him walking on the lake, and they were terrified. It's a ghost. I imagine I would say the same thing and might have said some words that I won't share here on stage. I would have been terrified. They said, and they cried out in fear. They were terrified at what was taking place. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. Don't be afraid. Verse 28, Lord, and I love Peter, hasn't even thought about it. Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come out to you on the water. Come, he said. Then Peter got out of the boat and walked on water and came towards Jesus. Again, let's pause here. This is amazing. Like, Peter's just like they're having a conversation, no big deal. Like, hey, buddy, you want me to walk on water? Sure, come on out and walk on water. All right, let's do this. Here, guys, hold my beer. Let's go out and walk on water. Just buddies hanging out, and you're just like, wait a second. Nobody has ever done this, and Peter isn't like taken aback by this. He's like, all right, I'm about to walk on water. Cool, let's go. All right, and jumps out of the boat. But verse 30, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, cried out, Lord, save me. Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. You have little faith, he said. Why did you doubt? And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. I can't imagine what it must have been like to be Peter in this moment of stepping out and having this amazing experience, being so very hopeful, and then at the same time losing focus across the wind and the waves and everything. And in that side of it, not walking on water, but the wind and the waves I can relate to, and maybe you can too, being here in a beach community where we see hurricanes and things come through on a regular basis. I love when hurricanes come close to Virginia Beach to create amazing surf, but not close enough to do damage. And there have been many times growing up where my buddies and I would ride from our neighborhood where we were living to Croatan Beach, because we wouldn't go to the main ocean front because there's usually lots of tourists and stuff. You're a tourist this morning. We love you. We're glad you're here and visiting with us. But we would go because we wanted to have a different kind of experience where it's just kind of locals hanging out doing our thing. And so we'd ride to Croatan Beach and go out in amazing surf, which normally only happens during the winter months here. And so we go out and we called the surf report beforehand, because it wasn't like you could search on the internet. Called the surf report beforehand and found out that it was almost double overhead during this hurricane. Now, let me break that down for you. Regular overhead, just single overhead, is about at 6 feet. And so the crest of the wave, the face of the wave is at about 6 feet. So almost double overhead is almost 12-foot surf when you would paddle out. That is amazing. And so we're like, let's do this. And so we pack up, don't tell our parents because they would be terrified, and we ride our bikes down, and some of us have bodyboards, some of us have surfboards, and I wasn't proficient enough at the time in my surfing capability, and so I brought my flippers and my bodyboard, and I paddle out. Now, you want to make sure as everything is breaking in this section to not paddle out there and get pummeled by surf. And so you find where it's not breaking on this side or not breaking on this side, you paddle out, you paddle over, and even then, in hurricane surf, it was tiring. And so we all get out there, and we're just kind of waiting out, see how these guys are waiting, but we were way out, and we just kind of say, are you going to die? No, I'm not going to die. You good? Oh, yeah, I'm good. And you kind of wait, get your breath, get composure, and then you get into the waves. And you begin to feel it pulling up on you. And you can see that these are monstrous. And now when you're down, it's different than surfing where you paddle and then stand up. There are tricks you could do on a bodyboard where you get on top of the board, but normally you're laying down. And then you begin to paddle, and you do tricks up and down it and whatnot. But there are times where you have to make sure that you're at the right angle on the face of the wave or something bad will happen. And I go in, yeah, you can see where this is going. And so I paddle into this wave. That's probably it's not full, double overhead. It's probably around 10 feet. And I pull into the face of the wave and realize I can feel my back feet getting pulled over. And so, because I've leaned too far. Because it takes a lot of focus to make sure that you're riding a wave properly and that you feel the rhythm of the ocean. And so as I pull in, I can feel my feet going over. So I'm now going over under the crest of this, knowing that now I'm in midair. I don't have a leash on my bodyboard because we were too cool. So I see that, and I'm going, I'm waiting, and it feels like slow motion as you're I'm going to hit the water. And though it's water, it does not feel like it when you are being tossed from the crest of it, and you just kind of boom, hit it, and then you're underneath, and it's throwing you around, and you're at the mercy of the current going, I don't want to die, I'm going to meet Jesus, I don't want to die. And you're doing all this stuff, and you're moving through, and you're swirling, and you finally, you're looking, you paddle the time, and you catch your breath, and then you're looking for your board, there's my board, and you grab it, and eventually you paddle in because you realize, man, I don't want that to happen to me again, and that was so terrifying. And I feel like in life, and in marriage and in our journey with God, far too often we go into it with the hope that things are going to be beautiful and perfect. And then we overcalculate or undercalculate what's about to take place. And we take our focus off what truly matters. And then we get in that spin cycle of life and we go, I cannot take this. There is no way that I can move through this. And so I just need to vacate. I need to get to shore. I need to sit. I'll let other people live the adventure. But for me, I'm fine with my feet right here because I don't want to experience that kind of hurt again. I am too scared. And it happens in relationships. It happens in people's work situations. It happens in marriage. It happens with your kids. It happens in that endeavor that has locked you in place. And I would just step out, but I'll fail again. I know I'm in a hurtful relationship, but I don't know what's on the other side, and so I'm going to stay in an emotionally or physically abusive relationship. And the truth is, we have to come to a place where we can step out and be who God designed us to be and be hopeful about what's next, but not take our eyes off of it. And I wrote in my Bible, and I put it this way, that hope gets you and I out of the boat, but Jesus, is the one that keeps us above the waves. And when we take our focus off that, just like Peter did, we begin to sink and cry out. But here's the beauty of it. Peter was the only one that got out of the boat. There were 11 other dudes going, not going to do that. It's sitting back there. And Peter, while he didn't think about it, just jumped. And people would say, but you sank, Peter. He's the only one that walked on water. The only one. We can't walk on water if we're not willing to jump into the adventure. And sometimes that means that it is okay to fail in the adventure than to sit back and be crippled by fear of what could happen in our marriages, in our relationships, and most importantly with God. And so what do we do? How do we move through that? And this would be our takeaway, is that you and I would shatter the stuckness. I'm creating a word today. Shatter the stuckness by stepping out. Not saying like, I know the whole adventure. I need to know the whole breadth of what's taking place. Some of you are OCD. You go, God, I need every little plan. And God's go, nope, just go here. And you're like, I don't like that, God. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to do anything until I get the whole plan. You're OCD. You have Post-it notes for everything. You have alerts for your Post-it notes on your phone. And so I get it. You're a planner. And God's going, no, I need you here. And I'm going to take you somewhere. You go, where is that? You don't need to know. And you go, then I'm not going. But we remain stuck in situations, we remain stuck in our marriage, we remain stuck in our relationships and within our job and all these contexts because we're not willing to go, I will take a step because I trust you and I'm going to keep my eyes focused on you. And so there's quickly just 5 things that I believe, and even if you're not married, if you're single, if you're divorced, if you're dating, if you're like, I've given up on dating, I don't even like anyone, I'm just done. Like wherever you are, that in your marriage, in whatever context you're in, that relationally, if you put these principles into place, even if you don't follow God today, I believe that if you walk these out, that not only God will move in them, but you'll go, wait a second. All of these principles are from God. I might actually believe in this. And if you're not there yet, I'm glad you're here with us. And so if you're taking notes, you can write these down. The first one is that take courage, for you and I to do this and get out of the stuckness, to take courage and not be afraid. To take courage and not be afraid. When everything started falling apart in the verse 27 of that passage in Matthew 14, immediately when they were terrified and 11 guys were like, oh, it's a ghost. And Peter's like, I can't wait to walk on water. I don't even care who that is. But they were terrified until they knew it was Jesus. And Jesus said to them, take courage, for it is I. Do not be afraid. And I started writing some stuff about me that, you know what, I'm afraid sometimes because I make mistakes. That sometimes God is going to be upset with me. That God's going to be like, see, listen, Jason, you did it again? Come on, man. Pull it together. What are you doing? And that I need to learn that God is with me, that God is with you. And in these moments where we just want to sit and go, I'm not good enough, nobody likes me, and what I call the Eeyore syndrome, that we're going to sit through that we would put that aside and go, God loves me, God cares for me. The fact that you're here believes that in this moment that you actually believe that there is hope or that you want it. Because there's not many of us that go to be a part of a community of faith within the church and go like, I just want to hang out. Like, no, you have better, if you just want to hang out, there's probably better things to do. You could go to the Strawberry Festival, you could go to Busch Gardens, you could go to the beach, but you're here because you believe that there is something more. It's so that you and I need to be able to take courage and not be afraid. The second piece of that is to know who to call in distress. When Peter starts sinking into the water, he does not look back and go, hey guys, Jesus left me, Jesus has let me die, and go back there and do that to his friends. No. Why? Because they were cowards, all still back in the boat. The first person, and I use alliteration because it's what I grew up with, and I did 4 different P's. The first one is that you would pray. That you would call out to God. In that moment, he has Jesus like right there, so he doesn't have to pray. He's like, there's Jesus. I'm going to talk to him. Jesus, help me. He says, Lord, help me. The first place that we would run and know to call in distress is to God. And say, God, I want to get out of this mess. God, help me. The second thing that I probably is put pastors. That we have a pastoral staff here that is here for you, to love and care for you, to help you through those things. And I can't tell you how many times that I talk to somebody after they've been dealing with stuff for like a month, 6 months, even a year. And they're like, yeah, I would have told you guys, but I was so embarrassed. And I'm like, and it kills me inside. It's like, oh man, we're here for you. We have people who love you and care for you. The other one that I wrote, and you guys who watch Grey's Anatomy will get this, you need to find your person. Yeah, you're my person. You remember that person, and we say it here, and some of you guys, you hear it so often that now it's second nature, and I want it ingrained in you that loves God and loves you, but loves God what? More than you. So like I love God, and I want to speak love and grace and truth to your life, but I love God and love you, but I love God more than you, so I'm able to help hold you accountable. So when things get hard, that you have a person that you know you can call on that isn't, when you're in distress, isn't going to go, yeah, man, that stinks. I'm real sorry about that. That they're going to, hey, man, that stinks. But hey, you did part of that. And so I want to help you through that and love on you, but say, hey, listen, this isn't like everybody gets a trophy, everybody's fine, everybody does. No, that was hard, and let's help you get through that, but let's not do that again. Because that ended badly. You almost drowned. You're like, yeah, almost drowned. That we don't keep letting people go out to the deep end if they can't swim. We help each other navigate through the tough stuff. The third piece in that is don't live, and I think this one's huge, don't live in shame. Almost every person that I talk to that comes to faith for the first time, comes to church, has some type of problem, hurt, pain, and it always ends up rolling back into, I feel ashamed of what's happening and I don't know what to do. What's interesting is when Peter falls down, and I've heard this story preached so many times when I was growing up, and they go, Peter just needed to keep his eyes on Jesus and everything's fine. But look at the reply of Jesus and listen to it here. He says, you of little faith, and it puts a comma there, why did you doubt? There's not an exclamation point there like, what in the world's wrong with you, Peter? Pull it together, buddy. You took your eyes off me. I'm so angry at you. There's a question mark there. That Jesus has a concern and not shame for him in the moment that he fell. Peter, you're my friend. Why did this happen to you? I know that you are so strong. You're the first one to get out of the boat. Look at those other 11 dudes who are just sitting there, they're like hanging out in the boat. You're the guy who jumped out. You walked on water. Why did you stop? And Jesus doesn't shame him. He's concerned for him. And here's what happens in the highs and lows. If we kind of track this journey, and I would put it this way, and I'm going to unpack this, is that you and I need to make sure that we don't sacrifice the permanent on the altar of temporary. And what I mean by that is you have low points in life. We're going to go through this. We have low valleys and we have mountaintop experiences. And life kind of goes like this. The problem is we mark our identity and our relationship with God most of the time by the high points. Life's good. God, you're so good. When things get bad, God, why do you hate me so much? And we go through these moments. And the thing is that God, if we go through this, God is the constant right in the middle. And so when we're in the low points, that God's able to pull us out and go, listen, this isn't the norm, but this isn't the worst. I have better for you. Let's bring you back to what is true. And when we're in the high points, that we don't go, this is the best it could ever get, this is all I need, that we go, God, I know that you are level and you are always there, and these high points, I'm just glad that I was able to be a part of it. But the moments that shame grapples with us is we just say, I just want to get past this, I just want to do whatever, and because the longer journey of constant, we just try to fix it in the moment. And we miss the permanent, beautiful solution because we want what's temporary and really quick. And I would challenge us as we move through hurt and pain and difficult circumstances to say, you know what? I'm not going to sacrifice the greater journey for this moment of feeling good. I'm going to walk this out and allow God to show up in how he can do things and do this beautiful work in my life, in the lives of the people around me. The fourth piece of this, and this is what really rings true, is Jesus' presence controls all things. Back over in the verse there, it was in verse 32, in that passage when he climbs in the boat with Peter. Everything gets calm. Like it's raging and things are going around. And I don't imagine that this is a gradual thing. Because it says that the waves and the wind and everything was nuts. He grabs Peter in the middle of that because he's terrified. It says when they get in the boat, everything stopped. It's not that everything slowly calmed down. Everything stopped. The very presence of Jesus controls all things. And I know for you, and I wrote, and for me, living this down, I wrote down that, you know what? I cannot fix my marriage. I cannot fix me. God is the one who heals me. God is the one who heals my marriage and heals my relationships. And maybe you need to hear this morning that God is the one in control of those things and not you. Yes, you have to be an active participant in the work of God, in what he's doing in your life, but he is the one who does that work. And the piece of this that I struggle with, and so if we can be honest, and if any place we should be honest as church, is the fifth one, is that worship God at all times. In our marriages, in our relationships, in our life. And this is hard for me, if we can be transparent, that there are moments where when the car breaks down, I'm not like, glory to God, all right, you're so good. Yeah, like I'm not like that, all right? I'm just like, #blessed, yeah. Like when me and my wife get into it and we're getting frustrated and we're getting angry about whether it's just stuff around the house or with the kids, and we have what we call discussions. We don't fight, we have discussions. And when that goes, I'm not just like, hey babe, can we just pause? Because God is so good. Can we just sing some songs today? And she'd be like, do you want to catch a shoe in the face right now? Like, is that what you're talking about? She would never do that. I'd just be like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir. Yeah, and so and when those moments happen, when those things take place, it is very hard. But watch what happens. Jesus and Peter crawl into the boat. They're not over there going, Peter, Jesus almost killed you. He's wet and everything. It's so sad for you. We're so, Jesus, you couldn't grab it. Like, and all that. No, they see what happens. The waves and the wind stop and they go, God, you surely are the Son of God. And it says that they started worshiping God. They had a party. Peter's dying. It's hypothermia. And they're just like, God, you're so good. And I'm like, am I at a place in my life? Are we in a place in our lives where we can let not the fear of what's taking place, but faith and hope overcome so that we can go, even in our marriages, yeah, this is hard, but God is still good. Man, in raising kids, God, this is so tough. And I know, I got 3 of them. Like, it is tough, but God, you are still good. That when the car breaks down, when the job goes bad, when you don't want to step out, but you've stepped out and then you sink. God, you know what? I got a chance to walk on water. You're still good. And I love, as they wrap up their book, Francis and Lisa Chan, they put it this way. So let your faith be bigger than your fear. Let your faith be bigger than your fear. You know, I was gone last week. I was in the mountainous area of Colorado. It was absolutely beautiful. It does not beat the beach. I would rather pick ocean over almost dying in the mountains. There's a couple pictures here. We had a chance to hike. It's already a mile higher in elevation there, and so it's different than sea level here, where you get up there and the oxygen's a little thinner. And I realized that because I am not as in shape as I thought I was. And so we start trekking up, and it was a much longer trek because we had to wind up and down. But it's 3 miles up to the mountain. So we were overlooking all that. It was absolutely beautiful. And we trekked up to this little lake that's 3 miles up, and there's actually a picture here, and we took that about 15 minutes after I felt like I was dying. I had to catch my breath and say, I want to get a picture, but first I need to make sure I'm not meeting Jesus right now. And so we finally got it, but it was cool up there. It was almost like a Disney thing, because like there's little chipmunks that were running around up here. They would crawl up and like nibble out of your hand. I was like, this is amazing. I was waiting for Bluebird on my shoulder, like all this stuff. I was waiting for animated characters to come out. It was so amazing up there. And so I started, and the thing is, this was the end of a much longer journey for me. 3 years ago, I started it's a thing called Rhythm in 20 with these guys, and I had a friend who had gone through it. He's like, you need to do this. It's amazing. I was like, well, what is it? He's like, I can't tell you. I'm like, I don't like that. I want to know. I want to be a planner. And so he's like, no, you just got to sign up. You got to do it. It's going to be amazing. It's 3 years. You're going to hang out with strangers. It's going to be great. I'm like, no. But I put in the application because I knew hundreds of guys, close to 1,000 guys apply, and you just don't know what you're going to get. And sure enough, I got picked. And there's 20 guys, 20 leaders, not all pastors, just some of them in business, whatever. And you're flying into Colorado as our first one. And then the next year we went to San Diego, Coronado Island. And then the next year back in Colorado. I know the struggle's real. Got to go to these places. Somebody's got to do it. And what the cool part was is that people were investing thousands of dollars for us. Like, we barely paid anything. And then people who didn't even know us were investing in each guy for the course of 3 years. And I show up, I don't know anybody, and I'm kind of a wallflower. You'll even notice it, like when you go out into the lobby and everybody's like coming out, I'll stand at a table and let you guys come to me because I'm terrified of you guys. And so just kind of, I'm introverted in nature. And so we get there and there's 19 other dudes that make 20, and there's the leaders, and they're all high-fiving. I mean, as a guy, we're in a lodge. There's like dead things stuffed on the wall. Sorry, PETA people. And so like there's stuff, and it's awesome. And I could smell what's grilling on the back, and I'm like, I don't know what it is, but that's definitely wrapped in bacon too. And so that's good. And all the guys are doing all their stuff, and I'm just like, oh gosh, that guy just made eye contact with me. I don't want to talk to him. Oh, he's coming over here. What am I going to say? Because I didn't know anybody, and I was terrified because in my life, at the time, I was shook by a friendship relationship that had gone completely south, and it broke trust, and I didn't know what to do. My marriage was shaky a few years back, and not that we were going to get divorced, but it was tough. And that it was hard to navigate all that. We had a couple kids at the time, and I walked into that going like, I don't know if I want to like quit ministry. I don't know what I want to do. I'm in a bad spot, and And they gave us these compasses that as we walked through it, and it started to make way more sense as we went through the journey in year 2 and in year 3. And at the end of that first session, that first week where we gathered together, I was like, man, God's doing something really weird in my life. Like, I was terrified to go in. Nobody I knew, a place I had never been to, away from family. I remember texting my wife in the airport as I was sitting there on my first leg of the flight before I was heading out. I was like, I think I'm just going to change up my flight and come home. She's like, no, you're not. You can go there. You're going to do this. Because she had kind of gotten an idea what the thing was going to be about. And she's like, you need this. Well, this last year and climbing up the mountain and being up there, watching this, and they told us as we got up there, you have these compasses that have, this is really metaphorical for your journey. You've needed some direction, but you've been kind of hopeless in life. You didn't know how it was going to go. It's for some of you in your occupations, for some of you in your marriages. But look at where you're at, and now in the trajectory of life as to where you were just a few years ago. And the first night when I was there, the first year, they asked us to all draw on a piece of plexiglass. And I drew a heart that was broken down the center with a Band-Aid. And they said, what do you want? I said, I want healing. I just don't know I know what it's like to tell people about healing, but I don't know what it means in my own life. And in this last year, they brought that board back out. So look at the journey that you're on now. And I got to look at it, and I wrote it down in my journal, and I scratched out the ing, and I put an ed at the end of it. See, because I wasn't going to sacrifice the permanent on the altar of temporary. You see, I wanted healing in those moments, but the problem was I needed to step out and walk out the long haul. And for you and I, we have moments where we want to stop. And we don't want, and we say it here at Forefront, it's the difference between a microwave and a crock pot when it comes to your faith, your journey, and your healing. A microwave, you just get it real fast, and it might be, meh, but a crock pot, you let that simmer, and you walk in a few hours later, 5 hours later, 8 hours later, when it's been sitting there all day, and you walk into the house, you're like, that's been marinating, and it's going to need to get in my belly. Because there's a different process when that happens. And what we want in faith is we want it real fast. And I want it to make it happen. And I want to go down the face of the wave. And I just want to do it. And I don't want to have to think about it. And I want to maneuver. But the problem is that there's sometimes where we want it so fast that we overcalculate. And we get wrapped up in the waves of life. And our marriage is failing. And the kids are hurting. And the job is bad. And we feel anxious. And we go, God, why? And he's like, I've given you the beautiful tools to navigate this. But it's going to be a crockpot journey. It's going to take time, and you're going to need to be able to navigate it well. And the thing that I can't tell you is the long haul, but what I can do is tell you, why don't you step out of the boat? For the sake of your marriage, for the sake of your relationships. And I can't promise you that you won't fall along the way. But I can promise you that I'm going to be right here to pick you back up. And for some of us, what we need to hear is not, you're going to make it way down the road. What you need to hear is that you have what it takes and are loved by a God that wants you to overcome fear and step out. And when we begin to do that, we can shatter that stuckness by taking a step. Why don't you pray with me?